I'll be honest, most of my time is spent in the river bottoms, landing gravel bars and high banks. I don't land a lot of elevation stuff, so I'm much more cautious. This rim rock looks pretty benign, but at the very edge the rocks are really big and it's pretty hard to tell, but it's pretty undulating on top. So I decided to come in from the other direction. The wind's more favorable and I land it and it's fairly smooth in the section that I landed in. The elevations that I'll be playing at today are anywhere between 2,600 foot elevation and 5,000 foot elevation. So with the temperatures, the elevation really isn't much of a concern on the performance of the airplane. It's fairly cool out. Right now I have my 38-pound duffel bag with all my survival gear. I have a belly pod, which I'm not sure if you noticed that I put the belly pod on. That's 25 pounds. I have about 20 gallons of fuel and myself, so that puts me at around 1,400 pounds. I spend a fair amount of time dragging places. You don't get to see all my circles made over places looking for spots to land, but I usually look at a spot from 2 to 3 different angles before I land it. This is all for fun, so there's not one single place out here that I have any pressure to land if I don't feel good about it. And so my feeling is, if I don't have that 100% certainty that I can make the landing, I don't make an attempt. There's just no reason to wreck an airplane out playing on something that you don't feel 100% confident about. I also pay extra special attention to coming in too low on any rim rock or sheer faces, because there can be downdrafts right off the edge that could push you down into them. So I try to shoot a high approach into places that have any type of lip at the beginning. I spotted this really neat rock formation from the air, and so I made several passes over this particular high spot just to make sure. I'm sure most people would think with 35-inch bush wheels, all these places would just be a piece of cake, but the GoPros make them look smoother than they really are. And just because the bush wheels are extra insurance doesn't mean you shouldn't take your time and make sure that there's not something that could potentially take the gear off your airplane. Even a place that looks like you should be able to land with no problem, I look at it at least one time before I come in and land, just to make sure. And never land a place while you're dragging it. When you drag it, that's the time that you always go around. Well, I just landed at this spot here. I saw this rock formation from the air, and it took me a little bit to figure out where to land. It's pretty wide open, but since I've never landed it before, I wanted to look at it pretty close. There's actually a big pile of barbed wire right there. Anyway, saw a couple nice bulls right over on that hillside. Let's go up here and see what this thing is. It's pretty bizarre. I sent a picture of this rock formation to a good friend of mine who's a geologist, and this is what he came back with. Just standing here all by itself. It's almost like a petrified tree, but it's not, I don't think. Very, very weird. You don't see rocks just standing like that. It looks like it's been eroded away by water almost. If my friend the geologist was here, he'd be able to tell me maybe what was going on. Pretty cool. I'm guessing Native Americans probably thought of this as some kind of special place. There's elk tracks all over here, so the elk like it. I don't know if it's because maybe there's some mineral here, but Elk tracks just everywhere right here. You can see them all. Well, even though I'm 57 years old, I love climbing on rocks, and the kid in me couldn't resist climbing up on top of this. There's an old 2-track road up here, so people have driven up here for sure. I might be the only person that's ever landed here, though. I depart this special spot, and I head further upriver. It's not long before I start seeing some neat little saddles and formations that look like they should be landed on, and so I pick one. It looks like not a super challenging one, but challenging enough that when I turn and I know that I'm landing it, the thought in my head is, you got to do it right. And going around once your tires are down on this thing really isn't an option. So you commit, and that's pretty much what's going to happen, is you're going to land it. I think I made 2 passes over it before I actually made my final turn and lined up on it. I felt 100% confident when I made that turn. Where my wheels touched down, it was nice and smooth. It had a nice rise to it. It had a fairly big bump about 200 feet up, which I had seen from the air. And my goal was to be stopped before that bump, and that's pretty much what happened. I didn't get out and walk it on the first landing. I took right off again, and then I came back in, I think later actually, and got out the drone and did a short little drone segment of it. All these places are so peaceful when you shut down and get out and walk around. I feel very privileged to be able to do this. Yes, it will leave tracks, but those tracks will be gone after the first frost. Other than the noise that an airplane makes, this is probably one of the least impactful things a person could do being out in this environment. And one last thing, this particular spot, I feel 100% confident in saying no one else has ever landed there. I mounted the GoPro to the left axle of my airplane for this particular view. It makes kind of an interesting shot because it gives you the perspective of, really low to the ground as you touch down, so you get to really feel it. All these high spots, the landing is the difficult part. Once you get set up to take off, you just push full power, point the nose downhill, wait for it to pick up speed. If you're not flying by the time you get to the end, just be sure to push the nose over. You don't want to stall it off the end. I spotted this little spot. It's where the middle fork of the John Day intersects with the north fork of the John Day. It looks like somebody's ridden an ATV up here at one time. I could see tracks. They're not airplane tracks, but it was a natural spot, so I went ahead and landed it. I didn't find any gravel bars that were super challenging. Nothing that I really said to myself, oh wow, this is going to make some extreme video. And to be honest, that's what I look for, but I can only do what the river gives me. There were some gravel bars with some rock so big that even with 35-inch bush wheels, there's no way I would land it. And they weren't just round river rock, they were like squared off river rock. And that would be really bad, to come up against one of those bigger rocks like that. Big bar here, I shut down, and it's really interesting. Right where I shut down here, I get out and I look right under the nose of my airplane, and I find this agate that's it fills the whole palm of my hand. And so I thought I found a really great bar for hunting down agates. That was the only agate of any size I could find on that entire gravel bar, and I spent about an hour and a half looking for agates. I found some fingernail size ones, but this one literally filled the palm of my hand. Most of these gravel bars had vegetation growing on them. Some of it was as high as my wing. Other places it maybe wasn't much taller than the bush wheels, but it did make it difficult to find clean, clear spots to set the airplane down on. This particular gravel bar here, I would say the rocks varied in size from volleyball size to larger. Although there's a road that parallels most of this river, it's not a very well used road, and there are a few cabins that I saw up and down the river. For the most part, you feel like you're in a fairly remote area. Not quite as remote as somewhere in Alaska, but still a nice getaway from city life. I saw this red dirt spot, and it looked like a natural landing spot. As I was coming in, I was a little on the low side to the rim rock, and you'll hear me add a fair amount of power. There's a little bit of a downdraft right off the end, I think, that was taking me below it. This is why I say you should always approach a sheer face with a high approach, because you really don't know what kind of wind you might encounter right off the end. Well, these were all new places for me. Although I've flown over here, I believe this is my third or fourth time, I have not explored it yet. And so it's always, like anything, exploring something new is always exciting. And I'm going to go back and pick up my dad, probably have some lunch, and then we're going to head home. Thanks for riding along. If you enjoyed what you watched here, please subscribe and hit the like button.